I turn to our opening speaker, is our Deputy Administrator for PHMSA, Drew Pierce. And Drew is the Deputy Administrator for PHMSA. She has an extensive background in federal transportation and pipeline safety. In 2006, she was named as the Federal Coordinator for the Alaska Natural Gas Transportation Projects, where she oversaw efforts to advance the nation's energy, environmental, and economic security by expediting the delivery of Alaska natural gas to North American markets. Prior to that, Ms. Pierce served as a senior advisor to the U.S. Secretary of the Interior on the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council. In addition, she was appointed by the Secretary of Transportation, Norman Mineta, to the Pipeline and Safety Materials Hazardous Materials Safety Administration Technical Pipeline Safety Standards Committee. Wow, that must have been an acronym. A position she held for 6 years. I couldn't get through that acronym. So without any more introduction, please, Ms. Pierce.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for the introduction. And the short version of that long acronym is the LPAC, which of course advises the pipeline side about issues and also about regulations. We don't have the same sort of advisory committees on the hazmat side, and it's something that we've been talking about, perhaps trying to figure out how we might institute and implement some sort of the same sort of advisory entity, although you do have your own interested parties group, and we're very active, of course, with you in that. But the FACA groups are, of course, much more formal. So welcome to day 2 of the forum for our R&D efforts for this year's idea gathering. We're going to continue to seek ways today to respond to the rapid pace of change within the industries that we regulate at PHMSA. They come in several types, the changes, from new products to evolving communication architectures, to advances in packaging materials, to major game changers like the advent of hazmat transport by highly autonomous vehicles. One of the purposes of events like this one is to ensure that we stand ready to address the challenges with as much efficiency as possible. And I know that efficiency in government oftentimes seem like a misnomer, but we are working to try to be as efficient as possible with our research dollars, which unfortunately are shrinking. So that efficiency can proceed from having a common understanding and a clear avenue of communications, and these meetings give us those avenues of communications. I'm curious how many of you or the organizations that you represent or the companies you represent responded to our recent request for information about hazardous materials transport by autonomous vehicles. Any of you respond with, great, good. Oh, not as many as I had hoped. As you no doubt know, autonomous vehicles are a huge issue for DOT. The Secretary is very interested in pushing forward the technology, working toward the autonomous future that she sees and that we all see. So we did the request for information to try to gather ideas from the public and from the interested party community as to what we should be looking for and what and also what concerns do you have about the coming changes that we're going to see as we see more autonomous vehicles in transportation, and how we might meld carrying hazardous materials with this new autonomous generation that we're facing. So yesterday, I know you talked a lot, and I suspect you will again today, about the concept of leverage. And that's what brings us the efficiency, is we use those reduced research dollars that we have. We need to leverage them as best we can to make sure that we get as much of the research and development done as possible. So the concept isn't just an aspiration, it's not even a goal, it's absolutely a necessity that we leverage our dollars. Without leverage, there's no way for a small agency such as PHMSA, with a mandate that involves 1 million daily shipments of hazardous materials, to succeed. We couldn't possibly get there. So that's why Getting our R&D program right is so important. We have to do it right. The nature of research and development is forward-looking. It seeks to solve problems before they even assert themselves in the form of dangerous incidents. And enforcement is always backward-looking. Hindsight is 20/20. But without the predictive analysis that we're doing with our R&D program, it enables our rules-making process to not be as reactionary. Even our rules-making is reactionary, as you all know. But with a good R&D program, we can try to be more prospective and not as backwards-looking. If we want to stay one step ahead of the next preventable adverse event, what we're discussing here today and yesterday is absolutely imperative. The agenda today is broken up into 4 areas. You're going to be talking about risk management and mitigation, about emerging technologies, about package integrity, and technical analysis to aid risk assessments. You'll be addressing integrating technologies for a smart transportation network, classification of new fuels, package types and materials, and gaps and vulnerabilities in testing and transporting energetic substances. You all know, and I've said it already, that our top-line budget is not as high as it was last year. That only increases the necessity that we do leverage these dollars. As we do so, keep in mind that the number one resource that we have as we do the leveraging is the dedication and the expertise of you, the folks who we work with on a daily basis. We want to thank you for accepting the challenge to help us leverage our dollars, and we know that working together, we can make those dollars work as best they can for all of us and for the safety that's so important. Safety is key. That's what we are all about on a daily basis. So let's work together through our R&D program to make the transportation of hazardous materials as safe as possible and stop as many of those unfortunate events as we can. That's all I have to say because you've got a lot of work to do today and we look forward to it, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Anybody have a question? No? Quiet group this morning. You're looking forward to Mr. Stuckey. Okay, let's do Bill.
Now, to support Ms. Pierce's comments, we are looking, as Veda spoke yesterday, of putting together an advisory council for R&D. We're looking, as you saw our presentations yesterday, that you saw FRA come in, you saw the Naval Research Lab come in, you saw Carter Rock come in. We are looking to leverage our opportunities. We always say, the Francisco and FRA says, you're just looking to take our money. That's a new way that we call it leveraging. He calls it something else. But that's okay. We're all working together, and Rick Bornhorst is here someplace. We're looking to partner and borrow FAA money too. So we'll leverage. But one of the first efforts we have is Bill Stuckey started when LNG, and still is, the buzzword, or how are we going to do that, surface transport of LNG. He started the DOT Safety Council. So that's one of our first efforts of really PHMSA leading and pulling together a hazmat effort where we're the driver, we're the chairman. So we asked Bill to come in and give us a status or an overview report on the DOT Safety Council on liquefied natural gas workshops. So thank you, Bill. And Bill is the Chief Safety Officer at PHMSA.
Yeah, thank you. Just one clarification, so my boss knows, my boss is actually the Chief Safety Officer, so I want to make sure that gets in the record. Anyway, thank you. Good morning, I'm Bill Stuckey. I'm going to talk to you about an old technology, liquefied natural gas. Liquefied natural gas has been around for a long time. They learned how to liquefy that gas in the late 1800s. But there are new emerging technologies that are coming through that interest the Safety Council. It piqued their interest when they got a briefing from PHMSA about the emerging market in LNG. And so much so that they wanted to kind of highlight that for the year as something that they wanted to study. So they asked me to lead a workshop It's not just a PHMSA workshop, not because I'm PHMSA, because I was just represented on the Safety Council. So late last summer, we began the effort planning to do that. We were going to have a workshop in the fall, but I got interrupted by my three best friends, Harvey, Irma, and Marie. And so we had to cancel a lot of that work. So the brief I'm going to give today is going to be fairly broad, but I want to stick to the R&D portion of the workshop. Okay, so it was a multi-agency, a multimodal, multi-agency workshop. Please pay attention to the slides. All the acronyms are on here. I'm going to use these acronyms, and there will be a test at the end of this brief. You got the test booklets, right, Eva? You can hand out later? Okay. So anyway, these are the agencies that participated in the workshop. Obviously, they were experts that have equities in transportation LNG, and it was of to note that some agencies knew quite a bit about liquid natural gas. Some of the agencies here really didn't. It was new territory for them, particularly the Federal Transit Administration. So we'll talk about the workshop objectives. So what we did is we asked the experts here to help us understand, help the Safety Council understand the issues and risks associated with the growing LNG market. If you didn't know, one of the big pieces of the LNG market right now is we are shifting from an import nation to an export nation. We've imported LNG for quite some time. We still do import, mainly up in Boston, because that feeds power plants up in New England. But most of the other import facilities are now being retrofitted to export, and they are slowly coming online. So we asked them to take a look at this. So the way we did it is we broke it up into segments, because it's not just modal, it's really, there's a maritime segment, roads, rail, and then there's kind of this multiple hazard where you have a lot of agencies that have equities in this, and also a pipeline equity. So we knew based on our planning that the role in the value chain for the agencies depends on whether LNG is used in commerce, transported in bulk in commerce, or used as a fuel. So that is a very important concept here, because we're very comfortable with as it's transported in commerce. We've been doing that for years, really. We do it by rail, by exception right now, for certain rail cars. We do it on surface transportation, but fuel and the small scale stuff, that's where we see the emerging market. So we actually had 4 areas that we looked at. We looked at R&D, as well as performance-based regulatory challenges, communication, outreach, and training. Today, I'm just going to focus on that research and development piece here, and we'll break it down by segment. So first, we'll talk about the maritime segment. This was led by the Coast Guard and our Maritime Administration, MARAD. They talk about needing additional research in the area of risk analysis. You're going to see this theme throughout all of the segments, the risk analysis research and the data. But specifically, they broke down on the maritime side some real specifics of where there is no research and they're looking for it. Vapor dispersion analysis on the water, water suitability, salvage operations related to underwater leaks, and then the firefighting procedures at sea or on vessels. So very unique. So, and again, they talk about the conditions and behavior for pool fires of LNG on water. So the Coast Guard particularly has done a lot of work in LNG, and they have a lot more work to do. They'll even admit that they are behind in the technology in keeping up, and they're very challenged in training as well. So I'll talk a bit about the roadway segment. And this was the Federal Transit Administration, Federal Motor Carriers Administration, and our National Highway and Safety Transportation Administration. Again, I said for federal transit, and actually for NHTSA, this was a new subject for them. They really had to do it. There are transit systems here in the United States that use compressed natural gas, CNG, but none that they knew of that are presently using LNG. We are seeing much more LNG use in transit use in Europe. We're seeing it used at ferries and by rail as well. So really, again, the key here is the market research. So market is driving this use for using LNG as a fuel. And I talked before about commerce or as a fuel. You'll find that as LNG gets used as a fuel, it's not being regulated. There's no one federal entity that regulates its use as a fuel. Whereas if we have fuel tanks on a truck, that's regulated. The way that tank is manufactured, the specifications are regulated by the Federal Motor Carrier Administration. That is not the case for an LNG tank. So we need research beginning in the market to understand that market is how many people are going to use LNG in trucks as a fuel. And we're pretty sure that that's all market driven. It's all based on the price of oil right now. But the market's changing. Even the way LNG is exported, the way it's sold and traded is changing from long-term contracts to spot contracts. So we're seeing this just evolving very quickly. One of the big challenges here is detecting leaks in surface transportation as well, because it's odorless and colorless. It's not like gasoline or other fuels that we use where we can detect it. So there needs to be research into how we can detect leaks of LNG when it's used as fuel. And we'll talk about rail. So this was led by the Federal Railroad Administration as well as Federal Transit. The specifics here, again, is research on the consequences of LNG releasing for rail accidents in tunnels, and more research on the limits and vulnerabilities of the tank cars. As I mentioned before, by specific special approval, special permit, LNG is being moved in tank cars right now by rail. But it's like Shell oil, where we had unit trains of shale oil. We do not have unit trains of 100 trains of LNG. That's not to say it won't be coming, but we're still challenged with knowing the full limits and vulnerabilities of these tank cars and portable tanks. Again, risk-based evaluations. This theme kept coming up over and over. Where's the data? Where do we find that risk-based analysis, and who's doing that for us? So the other regulatory agencies, this was PHMSA, Office of Hazmat Safety, NHTSA as well, and also the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the FERC, who does most of the permitting for these things here. Really, this is research into the market and the needs of the industry and the infrastructure. A particular note is small scale. You'll see they have what's called peak shaving plants. We've had them around for a few years. But these are small places where LNG is stored for winter use. So it's up north, they'll have these peak shaving plants. And they're smaller facilities. And then with emerging use as a fuel, there may be even smaller facilities where you have LNG in a fueling station, LNG in a multimodal station, LNG in ports. So those smaller segments are what was discussed here about more research into the vulnerabilities, and also how do we protect the general public as we go small scale with fuel, with smaller facilities that aren't large import or export facilities. And again, as I said, the theme is a baseline risk assessment for these small facilities. And then finally, we brought in our pipeline people. They're moving LNG through pipelines now. In fact, of note in the market, that's the cheapest gas there is. The cheapest LNG is moving into pipelines. That's why you're seeing people want to build pipelines right now, particularly for gas and LNG and liquid natural gas. So, and And on that front, the LNG facility and the failure data analysis is critical. So much so because the infrastructure, the import infrastructure is old, and we're repurposing that. So we're using older facilities. They're built in the 70s. So where's the failure data analysis? How do we sunset a facility? When do we do that? So these are some of the important concepts that we talked about. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my brief, subject to your questions. Sir.
I was wondering, typically my impression is that PHMSA deals with the transport of LNG as opposed to the facilities. So I'm just wondering about whether there's an idea that we could pursue R&D with regard to the facilities for LNG, as in this slide and the previous slide.
Yes, I mean, I think that there's still a lot of work to do with facilities because we're also talking multimodal facilities. It's not just a single mode. We're looking at ports. We're looking at using LNG as a fuel on ships. They're using it on passenger ships right now. So there are unique facets, unique facilities that they kind of roll in, roll off to do those types of things.
So are we enabled from an R&D viewpoint to consider the characteristics of those facilities inside the facility as opposed to the interface to the transport outside of it?
I would think so. I don't think we'd be restricted.
Certainly for terminals, the answer is yes. For example, we did a corrective action order, and FERC also did a letter to Sabine Pass. They had a recent problem with a tank, which is part of the facility. So we can do research into that sort of facilities. If you're talking about the actual tankage for fuel on, say, a ship, like Tote is refitting some of their ships, I think probably you'd look more to Coast Guard, maybe the Federal Maritime Commission. But for terminals, yes, and pipelines.
So in that context, when we speak about tanks, are you speaking about the tanks that are used for the transport in and out of the facility as opposed to the use of the tanks in the facility?
In the example I gave, it's the storage tanks in the facility. So it's the actual facility. So when FERC licenses an LNG facility, they actually, while they license the terminal, they also license all of the pending facilities, which could include even a pipeline. So the Alaska example is that the application in front of FERC for an Alaska LNG terminal actually also includes an 800-mile pipeline.
So, but PHMSA can consider those aspects in their R&D?
Yes, and we look at the design.
Okay, thanks.
And thank you, ma'am. But I do want to point out that the Safety Council looked at this from a multimodal perspective. So in that regard, I did not represent PHMSA for this workshop here. So from a multimodal perspective, the Coast Guard needs assistance. NHTSA may need assistance with some things. Certainly on the pipeline side, what Drew just said is true, but there is room to move, a need for research in all of the aspects for that.
It's kind of interesting that LNG is the material that's bringing the two programs within PHMSA to be one PHMSA, because we're seeing the hazardous material and the pipeline or transportation kind of come together. And so much of the work that's being done there includes both programs.
Sir.
Yep, Bob Franzak with the Association of American Railroads. You said that LNG was being transported in tank cars. I think you meant in intermodal containers.
Yes,
by rail.
that's correct.
That's right, because it's not authorized in tank cars.
That's right.
We filed a petition for rulemaking in January 2017, which I just got an acceptance of that yesterday. So,
By special permit in a tank car?
Well, no, we filed a petition for rulemaking to
Okay.
authorize LNG to be transported in tank cars. Yeah, there are some special permit applications out there. I guess what I would encourage you to do is to do this quickly, because I think what's going to happen is there's a need right now for the transportation of LNG, and the more we wait, the more it's just going to be transported by highway. And if that's what you want, you know, I guess waiting is good, but we think it might be safer by rail.
And you got the letter because the spring agenda was published, and so you'll see that there is a proposed rulemaking. We're going to start looking at it. So we're on the move, perhaps not super fast.
That's great.
Thank you. David Willauer with Cambridge Systematics. The question of fueling ships also comes up with the Coast Guard because of the different ways it's being done now. And I understand in Jacksonville, those tote ships that you just mentioned, Tote
Right.
and Crowley, are being fueled by truck shipments from nearby Alabama's Trussville LNG facility. So there are truck movements, and you need quite a few trucks to fuel a ship. So the Coast Guard is currently reviewing a bunker barge is currently under construction to try to look at bunkering LNG ships using a bunker barge, and Jacksonville is serving as a little bit of a test bed for a number of LNG applications. In Jacksonville, there are 2 liquefaction plants under construction right now. They're fueling ships in Jacksonville. The Florida East Coast Railroad is able to fuel their locomotives in Jacksonville, even though their facility in Hialeah, Miami, is their primary facility. If they need to, they can contract with the fueling facility in Jacksonville if necessary. So a lot's going on in Jacksonville right now, and because the Coast Guard hasn't looked at this issue for larger ships, such as cruise ships, I think we're going to see some more interest in this, because Carnival Cruise Lines, Disney Cruise Lines, they're building these LNG cruise ship vessels fueled by LNG that are going to need to get fuel. And one of the challenges is a cruise ship comes into port, and as you know, they need to refuel, but they also need to load passengers at the same time. And those 2 operations are not necessarily compatible if you're talking about an LNG bunkering operation happening alongside a passenger loading and unloading situation. You can imagine it's going to take some further review to figure out how to do that safely. So it really is new territory, and we're finding that more and more of these island communities, like in the Caribbean,
Right.
I mentioned yesterday, Malta is
And
now
that plays
importing
into the
LNG.
risk analysis of the Coast Guard. They call that simultaneous operations, because ships lose money if they stay at the dock.
Yes.
And so they want to do all of these operations at the same time: load, unload, bring on stores, refuel. So yeah, so a lot of challenges. One thing that I didn't mention, I'll mention to this group here, another recommendation to the Safety Council from the members of the workshop was that we bring the industry in and hold a workshop in conjunction with industry, because we can't learn about LNG, we can't know about the risk unless we bring people in together. So
Yeah.
that would be the
Yeah.
challenge for the Safety Council, to see how they want to do that. But we think it's important.
Yes, yes, thank you for your comments this morning.
The Europeans, I think, are ahead of us in terms of using LNG in ships and also in the barge-based bunkering. I know that British Gas had done quite a bit of work, and when Shell merged with British Gas and became the largest gas company in the world, they also acquired some of that technology. I do know, because a friend of mine who used to work with me sat on the Federal Maritime Commission, that they've been looking very closely at the use of LNG as fuel in the maritime sector. And lots of opportunities. It's pretty exciting. We just have to figure out how to make it work safely. Although I have to say, as an Alaskan, you know, we shipped LNG for 40 plus years out of Alaska to Tokyo with never an accident, no absolute clean safety record. And I've been both in and out of the terminal a number of times, but also ridden the ships. And it was a great operation. So Alaskans have never been afraid, if you will, of LNG. And we find it somewhat comical to come to the lower 48 and find that people are scared of LNG terminals.
Any other questions? I'm coming.
Bob Chaffin. I've been following the maritime side quite a bit recently, and if I'm not mistaken, Washington State Ferry is even looking at LNG. So I believe that, I believe that's even more impetus for FTA. And crossing over for a second, I believe PHMSA is one of the agencies that looked at defining reverse logistics. I think if you look at the land side operations, just to support the great increase in LNG as a fuel in maritime operations, might be something, I think it's outside of what you ordinarily would have considered for R&D, but looking at the challenges we already see in normal transportation, landside operations, moving goods out of ports, is that something PHMSA would consider a legitimate R&D approach to better understand the impact? Because I think the maritime industry is where it's going to hit us greatly, most quickly, in terms of distribution throughout the country to support all these operations. Is that in the portfolio or too far out of it, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, I think and we didn't give you a full rundown on all the projects we have going on now. We have been looking at doing some transportation risk assessment, which started out with where is the material at this point. I think David Willauer with Cambridge gave a presentation on that yesterday. It was our baseline as we started to, I think as you pointed out, I know sitting in my office we said, where is this LNG? Where is it likely to go? Where are we likely to see empties coming back from? So we did start doing some risk assessment in that field. Exactly where R&D will end and the program will pick up, we haven't hit that point yet, so it would still be in the R&D realm.
It's an interesting irony that in Washington State, the ferry system has been looking at trying to go to LNG because it's cheaper, cleaner than diesel, certainly, and a lot cheaper than low sulfur diesel. And they were hoping to build a fueling terminal in Tacoma, but the local community and the Leave It in the Ground crowd are completely against it. So at the moment, I don't think it's, last I knew, it wasn't moving forward, at least not quickly, and I don't know whether they'll ever get one built or not. So the ferry system may find itself having to look for yet another alternative. But it is unfortunate that in my opinion, that we are not able in some places to use what is one of the cleanest fuels we have today because we are unable to build the infrastructure that we need to build.
Anybody else? Okay.
We'll say, since this will be the second to last time we're somewhat in plenary, we'll have a report back from the working groups. If you have any other questions for Drew or for Bill Stuckey, you catch them on the way out. They're probably not staying in the working group. So if you have any last questions or comments, please catch them before they leave. Their schedules would not permit them to stay for all the working groups. Where are we going the rest of the day? We opened with this yesterday and said our goal here is to get as many ideas as we can. If the working groups get nothing but titles and brief outline, that's good. If they get full research needs statements and we know exactly what the problem is, that's even better. We'll take it. But anything you have to give us is fine. And we don't even care if you give it to us in the wrong group. If you think you fit in packaging integrity, but we think you fit in risk management, you go wherever you want to go, and we'll pick it up and we can have the discussion and we can sort it out later. Some of you that commented to me, Dell, who used to work in our standards office, he says, I could be in all 4 groups. I said, well, you're welcome to call in, sit in one and call into the other 3 if you like. You can spend 15 minutes in each one and keep rotating around. Whatever works for you, whatever makes you happy, you can float from group to group, and that's perfectly okay with us. But again, the idea is Mark Lepovsky, through TRB, we briefed a gap analysis and a list of projects that probably address those gaps. We briefed that yesterday. We do want to use that as a basis of our discussions because for us, for Veda, even myself, as we start feeding in our next acquisition strategy, we want to use that gap assessment and say, here are the problems we're solving. We don't want to just say, here are things I think would be fun to study. We want to look at gaps, we want to look at problems, and we want to look at output. What are we getting out of it? Research to say we have a nice book on the shelf isn't good research for us. So we want to have products, we want to have devices, as we saw the W-Ink people, that we would have classification. So that's what we're looking for. So all the discussions will be facilitated. We've got subject matter experts from our technical office will walk you through. So whatever comes up, we should be able to handle. On the agenda, you'll see we have breakout rooms A and B. You will be going back out to the foyer. A and B would be out to the right. I think C and D. C is also, oh, even knows where all the rooms are.
C is right here in the glass room behind you, and then D is this closed off room far left. What's my left? Maybe it's your right.
And then if you're in the auditorium, we're going to ask you to come down to the side table here. We're not going to try to have somebody stand at the microphone and everybody else here. We'll give you a writing surface and we'll have discussions down here at this table here. And what we'd like to do is give everybody 15 minutes in the groups. I know the agenda says they'll start at 9:20, but they're going to start at 9:30. So you could just pick the room you'd want to be in. And thank you. And we look forward to all the ideas today. And we will brief out again this afternoon. Thank you.